Hey Dan, I just want to give you sort of a brief rundown on setting up a pre-master, like setting up a track or tracks, multiple tracks, to be mastered kind of thing. Now, first of all, just so you know, what I'm using is Logic. That's what I use. However, you know, Ableton, Cubase, they all do the same thing. Logic, whatever. Any rate, so what I've got here is I've got my mixer window. This is what I'm going to be dealing with. And again, I'm sure Ableton and Cubase and all those guys have mixer windows. And what this is, it's basically like a desktop mixer. It's like these are all my individual tracks in a song, like all the blue and the green guys. So the blue and the green, you see what I mean? There's like track 1, track 2, blah, 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 blah. So there's all my tracks. The yellows are my master. The last one in Logic that actually says master, we're not going to worry too much about that one. This one here, output, that would be your master, like your master, your output, obviously, 1 and 2. Now, the only thing that I have on that, you said you had a limiter, you don't want to have a limiter on there. The only thing I have is a level meter, and a level meter is this. Here, I just clicked it, and so that's the level meter, and all that does is show me levels, right? You see, there's the levels, and that's all the. And now the thing, it's very important that that's the only thing, if that even, you have on your master output, right? Which is your stereo. See, there it is, output. That's your stereo tracks, okay? And yeah, that's the only thing I've got on there. So you don't want to have a limiter on there, okay? That's not good. Now, the other thing that you mentioned too is that you had your master level set to -3 or -0.3. Now, you don't want that. You want it to be -3. So as opposed to -0.3, you want it -3, which on mine sort of falls in between 0 and -5. I mean, actually -0.3 falls in between there too, but but you want it to be, basically you want your levels to be on average, right? You know, because you're dealing with obviously different volume levels in your song, and you know when the kick comes in and the bass comes in is going to change the levels and all that. But yeah, on average, you want the levels to basically fall on your master track, your master output there, your 1 and 2. You want them to be in between -3 and -6, okay? Not 0.03, or you want it between -3 and -6, okay? Because that, and you don't want a limiter on that last thing, on that last track, like you mentioned that you have. Now, the point being is that you want the best sonic. You want lots of headroom so that the person doing the mastering has room to play with, okay? And you need that, so you need -3, peak no higher than -3, not -0.03, but -3, okay? And you sort of want it on average to fall between -3 and -6, okay? That'll give me lots of room to play with and sort of compress it out. Now, the thing is, I'll just do this here. On track 2, just so you notice, I've actually used a limiter. And you can see limiter right there. And the reason for that was when I set my levels for this song, it was still peaking out, and I found out it was that one track that was peaking out, and I adjusted the volume on that one track, and then you couldn't hear it anymore. So I still wanted to hear it, so what I did is I stuck a limiter on there, which a limiter cuts off a free, you can still hear the track, but it says you can't go any louder than this kind of thing, yeah. So as opposed to using a limiter on your output track, find the individual tracks that you're going to do that in the mix process, right? You want to use your limiters and your effects and all that stuff. You want to set that up in the mix process before you get to the pre-master. Now, okay, so let's say that you've got your track, you're happy with the mix, nothing's really peaking out too much, but you want to set that peak level, like I told you. You want to sort of get it in between -3 and -6. Now, the way you do it on Logic, and I'm sure it's probably the same with the rest of them, is you have your mixer window. That's what we're working with. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set this down for a second, but you see how I've highlighted that white track right there, and you see you can highlight other tracks. Well, what I want to do, actually, is I'm going to highlight all the tracks in the song, okay? So just give me a second. You see I've highlighted one. Well, when we come back here, I'll have highlighted all of them. So just give me one sec. There we go. Okay, so I'm highlighting them all, and the way you do it in Logic is Shift and click kind of thing. Again, I'm not sure if you're using a Mac or a PC, but basically, yeah, you just want to highlight all of those. So now you see, we're back. I've highlighted all those except for my output tracks, like my master and my output. You don't want to highlight those. So now, the reason being is, say you've got it this far, you're happy with your mix, your levels aren't peaking out, you've got your limiters, all your effects and everything in there, but you got to get that level so that it peaks in between -3 and -6. Now, let's say that I'm peaking at 0, okay? Because usually, you know, when I'm working, before I get to the pre-master, I try and peak things at 0 so that nothing's red or whatever. So now let's say that we got to take it down. Let's say that the song peaks at 0 and we want to take it down to -3. Now, with all these things highlighted, you see, I've got my cursor and that there. If I were to move this where it says 12, I don't know if you can see that, but it says 12, and if I were to move that down to 15, all of them would move down 3 dB, -3 dB. You see, so that's sort of what you do, is you get your mix, and then to set it to the pre-master level is you highlight all of them like that, and then bring it down to where the highest peak is going to be -3. Usually, just to be safe, I go -3.1 kind of thing, and in that way I know it's not going over. And as I say, if you're having problem with one track is sort of peaking out, just stick a limiter on that one track. Don't stick a limiter on your output level. And yeah, I think basically that's it. So once you've got your levels set between -3 and -6 on the output, and you don't have any effects, like as I say, on mine, I've got a level master or a level meter, and I mentioned before, a level meter doesn't affect the sound, it just shows you it's a meter, that's all. So that's the way you want to set it up for a pre-master. Any rate, if you have any more questions, get back to me, and yeah, hope this makes sense. Okay, talk to you soon. Oh, the other thing. Sorry. One other point. I'll listen to your thing on SoundCloud, but I don't want to take the actual file I work with from SoundCloud, because SoundCloud compresses and all that. And so yeah, you want to have the highest possible file, 2496, 1644, 2448. In those, those are the, like, 1644 is the sort of CD quality, but we want to get it better. Like DVD quality would be, the best to work with, which is what, 2448, something like that. So in that range, you want to leave that headroom that I talked about before, and also you want to give me the best quality of file to work with, kind of thing. The bigger the better. So yeah, and then as I say, the thing is once you get your levels all set this way and the files all this way, then you see, when I get around to mastering it, I don't have to make drastic changes between the tracks. You see, like, I can basically set it up, and there's going to be little minute changes between the tracks, but I want to get everything all the same level on your project, right? So when it could be a rock CD, you go buy a Black Sabbath CD and you throw it in, and there's not major changes between each track, right? And that's the part of the idea of mastering. And so yeah, best file possible, best file quality possible, like 2496 would be pushing it. 2448, that's DVD quality. 2444 would be acceptable, and bare minimum would be 1644, but that's CD quality. But you see, CD quality has been come down, right? Because their masters are going to be higher quality than 1644. So say 2444 or 2448, you're going to have huge file sizes. Each track is probably going to be about 60 megabytes, something like that. But that's sort of the standard kind of thing to work with. And yeah, there you have it. Get back to me if you have any other questions. And yeah, there you have it.